Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. And the Electromaker team have been very busy. Not me so much, I've been busy being ill, which is why there was not a show last week. However, Robin and Rich were at the Hardware Pioneers Max event in London. In fact, if you follow the YouTube channel, you've probably seen a flurry of interviews from different people. And I will be going over in brief what that was for those of you that only watch the show and don't like to watch the shorter interview videos on the channel. Because Hardware Pioneers looks like a really cool event, and it's one that I've never been to. It takes place in London, and for those of you that are new to the show and are confused by my accent and saying I can't go there, I live in Germany and have done for the last 10 years, which is why I do all of the stuff at the German events. Yeah, it looked like a really cool event, and Robin got to have another interview with Massimo. I spoke to him in Rome last year, and he's just a generally lovely bloke and a very interesting bloke to speak to, and of course he was talking about the new Arduino R4. And this show is, by mistake, not on purpose in any way, quite an Arduino heavy show, because Arduino also, off the Tales of Hardware Pioneers Max, but nothing to do with the event specifically as far as I know, announced a new Arduino Nano, which is the ESP32 variant, which I think a few of us kind of saw coming one way or another. Also we have a new product of the week, and that just happens to be the Arduino Nicla Sense ME. And none of these things were planned to happen at the same time, but yes, we have a very Arduino heavy show this week, which is always a good thing. And of course, there's a few other interesting things fitted around that. We're talking about Project Cottonwood, which is a new SBC, which is very mysterious, but looks very powerful and cheap, but we'll get to that when we do. So with all of that to get through, let's get on with the show. So, we will be starting this week's show by talking about the Hardware Pioneers Max event that happened in London last week. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the show, I was not there personally, and it's a pity. It's an event I'd really like to attend at some point. Hopefully I can get over for the next one, because I have covered some very large events. Embedded World and Electronica are two that come to mind. The Nuremberg Messe and the Munich Messe are huge. Each one of those rooms can hold several hundred stands, and depending on which messe you're talking about, there are 8 to 12 rooms full of these things. It's very overwhelming. Whereas Hardware Pioneers does sound like a very busy event, but it's also quite small. It's just one room full of everyone talking about their different things. From what I've seen, it does seem like a really fun event, and we'll be looking at just a few of the blog articles and interviews from there. In fact, let's get started actually. One of the ones that really jumped out to me was Otii, which is a new product from a company I've never heard of before called Qoitech. So, it's Qoitech, actually. Qoitech is how you pronounce it, and I should have known that just by looking at the name Qoitech. So yes, there's a blog article on the Electromaker website for it. I will be leaving a link to it in the description. And the Otii range is their range of power supplies and sources and sinks, basically. And you can use them for testing battery characteristics, which is, of course, something very important. We talked recently about, several times, about different ways of working with batteries in your projects and the pitfalls that come with that. If you're going to be putting certainly a battery inside something that you're going to be shipping, you need to know the battery characteristics of it. You need to know how it's going to work across its lifespan. There's a fantastic interview with Werner that Robin did on the floor of Hardware Pioneers. I suggest you go and watch that video, because he'll go into a huge amount of detail as to how this thing works and how you can use it, and the wide variety of software ideas that it's basically a programmable power source is the way that he describes it. And there's a wide software suite, as you can see, for working with it. And the latest one, the Otii Arc, actually it probably says here, the Otii Arc and the Ace Pro differ slightly differently in their capabilities. So I think the Ace Pro is the one he's talking about, which has a range of 0 to 25 volts from -5 to 5 amps and a completely floating output, and a sample rate of up to 50 kSPS, so kilosamples per second. Obviously this is working differently to a logic analyzer or anything like that. But if you are interested in finding out more about it, as I said, there will be a link to it in the description. And one of the things I love about going to these events and actually being there and talking to the people about them is that you hear the people whose vision it was to make this thing work talk about them with passion. And yeah, Werner is a great describer of what is going on here. And you can tell that I'm not that, because I just described someone as being a great describer. But yes, Qoitech is one of the ones that I know Robin was quite impressed with. And if you'd like to find out more, head to the link in the description. Now we're going to move on to Cavli Wireless, which is a company from San Jose in America, San Jose, California, as if California is not in America, from San Jose, California, America, who sell IoT products. And I had never heard of them before, but they have a variety of different little chips, and I don't know if we're calling these systems on chips, systems on modules, or collections of things on a chip that are designed for working with IoT. So that's GNSS positioning, that's eSIMs, and all of that kind of good stuff. Each one of which comes with its own development kits, depending on what you want to do with it. Now, as I mentioned with the last one, if you really want to understand what's going on here, the best thing you can do is not listen to me talk about it. It's head to the link in the description of this video, and then you can hear Robin interviewing the actual people from Cavli themselves. But in short, if you do want to hear it from me, there's a bunch of these different so this one says it is an eSIM, but if you actually kind of look into it, there's lots of different ways that these things can work. They can be put together to fit your needs. So for example, this gives you a quick run through of all of the different products that they had on show, and each one of these things can be fitted onto a development board, as you can see here, and the Cavli Hubble we'll talk about in just a moment. But yeah, for example, if you follow through to the Cavli site and look at the Cavli Wireless, what do you even call one of these things? I know it says there's an eSIM there, but there's various things under the hood here. I mean, as it says here, it's available with various things. So it's an optional integrated GNSS, but an optional integrated eSIM. So presumably all of these things will fit underneath the same flap here, which is just there to stop interference, I'm assuming. But what I'm wondering is what you call the flap. You'd think it's something that I should know after all this time of talking about it, but I don't. But that's the idea, that these are very extendable different modules for working with various forms of IoT, asset tracking, or working with things over the air, updates, and sending things to the cloud from wherever you are, using a variety of different communication methods. And you can decide exactly what you want, and then you can get a development board that works exactly the way that you want it to work out how you're going to make your fleet of things work. And that the thing that they say is basically from prototyping through to global deployment in 3 months. That's the tagline here, that you can basically decide what you want to do, and then they'll give you the tools in order to actually get that up and running that quickly, which is something that if you are actually trying to develop a thing that will be a hardware product that is working across the world, is pretty quick. Anyway, my slightly waffly version of talking about this aside, that is what Cavli are doing here. And again, I advise you to actually watch the interview with Cavli rather than just take my word for it, because I did not explain that very well. And the other part to the puzzle here is, once you have all of this hardware out there, how do you talk to it? Well, they have the Cavli Hubble. And Hubble is their name for their basically online cloud in the browser way of working with every aspect of this. So as it says, device management, data plan management, group management, and messaging services. Also OTA updates and the ability to remotely monitor and control a fleet of devices. And as you can see from the nice little image here, it's showing you all of the different GUI elements you can have. And the way most of these things work is that, it's a bit like making a drag and drop website almost. You can drag and drop what you need into there and see what you need. And there are a variety of DIY projects who work with things like this. And of course, there's things like Node-RED that do this. The beauty of working with something like this is that Cavli have made this stuff to work specifically with their hardware, and all of the difficulty of getting these things working with each other is taken care of behind the scenes, so you don't have to do it, which is of course a useful thing if you just want to concentrate on getting your product working the way that you want it to work. So yeah, Cavli was another one that we found very interesting. If you would like to find out more about it, you can head to the link in the description. All of the things I was showing you on their sites just here are the links in this blog, but at the bottom of the blog as well is a link just straight through to Cavli Wireless. I had not heard of them before, hardware pioneers, but I'll definitely be looking into them again and keeping an eye on them because they do seem quite interesting. Now, I could spend this entire show just talking about things that I've watched Robin talk about at Hardware Pioneers, but that would sort of go against the point. All of this content exists on our blog, it exists on our YouTube channel as well, and if you have the notifications turned on for this channel, you've probably noticed a lot of these showing up in your feed already. And yeah, there's been some super interesting chats. I wish I had time to talk about the Texas Instrument chat, because obviously they are talking about the new Beagle Play and Beagle Connect Freedom that we saw at Embedded World, which are both very interesting things. Like the idea of having a Linux SBC with long-range communication on it, designed to work with this handheld walkie-talkie looking thing. Fascinating stuff. I'd love to play with it. There's a lot of other things we could talk about. Of course, Edge Impulse were there. Yeah, I mean, the top 9 slots on our blog are all just Embedded World stuff right now. However, of course, the one thing I am going to quickly talk about is Arduino, because Massimo Banzi was there, and Robin got to have another quick interview with him. And as I've mentioned, I've spoken to Massimo before. He's a really nice guy. Speaking to him off camera as well as on, he's just someone who seems a genuinely nice person. I know that shouldn't particularly matter. We're talking about things here rather than people, but it does. It matters to me. And it was him just essentially giving an introduction to the new Arduino R4. He had the R4 Wi-Fi version in his hand. You can see just here, including that new LED matrix, and just gives a bit of insight into the decisions behind the new board. And in fact, The very next thing we're going to talk about on this show is the new Arduino Nano ESP32. He kind of talks about in the very start of this interview, one of the reasons why the Nano ESP, he doesn't mention the Nano ESP32, but the reason why the Nano ESP32 works one way, whereas the Arduino Uno R4 Wi-Fi isn't run on the ESP32, it just uses it as a coprocessor, and that is down to voltage. The Renesas chip that they found to put on the new Arduino Uno R4 is unique for a number of reasons, but as Massimo mentions in the interview, it is natively 5-volt tolerant, making it backward compatible with all of Arduino's shields and everything that Arduino has done with the AT Mega 2838. The AT Mega 328P that was on the Arduino Uno and Nano for years, it makes it completely compatible with that without burning anything out, because most modern processors are 3.3 volts, which is an issue. And the other thing that he mentions is that it has a native USB host to it, so you don't need any kind of conversion chips in order to talk to the chip via USB, which is now, of course, a USB-C port, which is something that's very nice as well. So, if you'd like to find out more, including listening to the interview with Massimo, you can find a link to that in the description of this video. But I will also leave a link to just the general Hardware Pioneers part of our blog. Do I mean yes, Hardware Pioneers. I forgot which event we were talking about for a moment there. But the Hardware Pioneers event, this is the second time that we've been there to do interviews. I've never been there personally. I hope I get to go next year. And there's always a lot of very interesting stuff from people that I may have not heard of before. If you're interested in finding out that in general, if you head to the link that just says Hardware Pioneers blogs, I guess I'll call it, that will link to just a page of all of our blogs from the Hardware Pioneers thing. But yes, moving on from one kind of Arduino to the new Arduino Uno. No, wait. Moving on from the Arduino Uno to the new Arduino Nano. If you are enjoying the Electromaker Show, it would mean a lot for us if you could just check that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. By clicking the subscribe button either on our YouTube page or under the video that you are watching right now, we will be added to your subscription box, and this is where you can find all of the different, the latest videos from all of the different places that you are subscribed to on YouTube, which is of course different to Twitch. This is not a money thing, this is totally free. However, if you then click this drop-down menu and select all notifications here, the top right corner here next to your user panel will give you notifications for when any of the channels you have the notifications on put something new up. Now, at the minute, we have loads of stuff from Hardware Pioneers Max. Usually it's just one show a week, the Arduino Uno thing, and the occasional thing from the product of the week, which is confusingly not weekly, it's every 2 to 3 weeks. But recently we've put a flurry of videos up because we were on the floor at Hardware Pioneers Max interviewing people about their stuff, including Massimo Banzi about the new Arduino R4, which was kind of cool. I make liberal use of notifications on YouTube because I have, well, close to 2,000 subscriptions on YouTube now. I've been using YouTube as a research tool for my work for so long that if there's videos I really want to see when they come out, I use this notification tool to see. I can just look in the top right corner and see what I really want to see. Now, what would also be very useful is whichever video you are watching on the channel, which is presumably this one if you're listening to me right now, if you click the like button on that video, it doesn't just tell us that you like it, although of course we're very happy to hear that. It tells YouTube that you like it as well and makes it far more likely that they will recommend it to other people. Now, these are all free things that you can do that only take a few seconds. However, if you would rather get something physically in your hand as a way of helping us, but of course spend a little money to do so, there is a far better way that you can do that, and that is by shopping at the Electromaker store. Yes, if you wonder whether Electromaker has a shop, Electromaker has a shop, and it sells everything from Raspberry Pi and Arduino and Sparkfun, Adafruit, a bunch of different people, and we have a fairly decent stock of everything at any given time. So if you are wanting to find something for your next hobby project, maybe you want to buy a kit for someone who's getting into the hobby for the first time, maybe your work is looking for 10,000 of something very specific, take a look in the shop, and even if you don't see it there, it might be worth contacting support at store-electromaker.io. You can just click at the top here. Because we are usually able to get our hands on most things when necessary, and it is the single best way that you can support the show and everything that we do here at Electromaker. So, with all of that said, let's get back to the rest of the Electromaker Show. So, as I mentioned at the end of the last section, the new Arduino Nano is an ESP32 variant, and I don't think that many of us who sort of follow what Arduino do are all that surprised to see this appear, because there are so many variants of the Arduino Nano now that can do a huge amount of things. It seemed likely that we'd come up with something a little bit like this, because for a while there has been Wi-Fi versions of the Nano. For example, the Nano RP2040 Connect was actually one of the more interesting RP2040 boards for a while when it first came out, because it combined the RP2040 with Wi-Fi, which was long before there was a Raspberry Pi Pico W. It came out just a little while after the Pico. And it also had sensing capabilities on board. It had a MEMS microphone and a 6-axis IMU. In fact, those of you that remember the deep cuts of the Electromaker Show might remember that I featured myself briefly on the show because I made a little controller for the game Trackmania, which you move the controller to move the car and scream at it in order to make the car brake, which I'll embed or link or something. That was a fun little project from back when I had a little more time on my hands. I think I had one less child. But yes, I'm getting distracted. It's very hot up here today. The Nano ESP32 is something that I think a lot of us saw coming, but there's a few things about it that I do find sort of interesting. The first thing I did notice is that this is a USB Type-C connector, but I don't know if I've ever seen one quite like this. And you'll see that this isn't just this image when we go to the shop panel of it, which we will do in a moment. It looks like there's a sort of cutout here on the USB-C port, and I just don't know why that would be a thing. I'm curious. If there is a proper reason for that, please do let me know in the comment section. But I've seen a few different photos of it, and it always jumps out at me straight away. But yes, this is an ESP32 board, specifically based on the S3 system on chip from Espressif, and we all know the ESP32, we all know and love it. There's a reason why everyone does. And much like everything else in the Nano family, it is small, in fact 45 by 18 millimeters. It combines castellated edges with pins, as you would expect. But the big difference, as I mentioned in the last section, is that this is one of the new Nanos, which is also only 3.3 volts tolerant. Now, they used to put, Nano 33 BLE. It was part of the name. It was right. The reason it says 33 is because it's saying this is 3.3 volts, don't fry your pins. I think they've got to the point now where they realize that most people know that most modern microcontrollers are 3.3 volts tolerant. And so, yeah, we're not going to put it in the title anymore, but it still doesn't change the fact that the backwards compatibility of the Uno is only the Uno. If you try and use your old Otii Mega 328P Nano with these new Nanos, you might burn the nice, fresh, new, expensive Nano you just bought. Well, I say expensive. If I remember correctly, this is €18, which isn't crazy bad, actually. I know you can get ESP32 development boards for much cheaper than that, but they're not Arduino boards, and they don't have the same level of support as other Arduino boards, regardless of how good the community is at porting all of them over to the Arduino IDE. Now, there is a very nice video of the unveiling of the ESP32 Nano that you can find on the blog post, also on the official store page, which goes through everything else that I've just told you, probably in a better format than I have, and maybe in a shorter time than I did too. But then again, that's why you watch the Electromaker Show, probably to hear me womble about things a little. But if you are interested in actually buying one, there's two versions of it. There's a version without headers, which is €18, and a version with headers, which is €19. The princely sum of just €1 to get the headers soldered on, which actually isn't all that bad. I think I'd pay someone €1 to save me having to solder headers onto boards, because I've done it so many times at this point. Now, one thing that is interesting is the Arduino IoT compatibility, IoT cloud compatibility is something I was expecting. The Arduino Cloud, they have their own cloud service, which is something we should maybe do a deep dive on the show at some point, because it is the biggest name cloud service really that there is, and maybe we could do a comparison thing. In fact, if you would like to see a comparison of different cloud services, maybe that's something that we could do on Electromaker if we pulled a few strings and said, hey, can we have access to your things just so we can see how they work and blah, blah, blah. Because what I don't want to do is start 10 different subscription services. Can I put myself on the screen? Yeah, I don't want to do that. But the Arduino IoT Cloud app, which is available soon, August 2023, which at the time of recording this is only 10 to 15 days away. This looks super interesting. But we're not going to talk about it today, but this looks super interesting. And we will be talking about it as soon as it is available. And yeah, if you would like to know more about the Arduino Nano ESP32 version, you can head to the link in the description. I don't know if I need to go through all of the specs, because I think you sort of, at this stage, pretty much know what you're getting. But yeah, it has the same amount of digital inputs and the same amount of digital inputs and outputs as the old Nano. I think it has more it has more PWM pins than the older ones used to. But it does not have a analog output like the new R4 does, because that's part of the Renesas MCU rather than the ESP32. And it is using the Nora W106 ESP32S3, which is a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth system on chip. And anything else that you want to know, you can head to the store page here and find this list out of things too. And I may well also write up a blog post on this one as well, so if you head to the description of this video and find a tidy Electromaker blog post on it too, you'll find all of those details compiled nicely there as well. But yes, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, this is a very Arduino heavy show, and I didn't really mean it to be, but that's just what happens. But yeah, if anyone does know why they've done this with the USB-C connector, I'd be really interested to find out, because that looks like you could bash it. It looks like you could bash it off the corner or something. I don't know. Please do let me know if there's a reason for this. It is time for our product of the week, and the product of the week this week is the Arduino Pro Nicla Sense ME. Now, this is a very Arduino heavy show, and I do get excited about lots of things, but the Arduino Nicla line, Arduino Pro Nicla line, is what, to me, probably the more exciting thing that Arduino has thought up in a while. Because the mainline Arduino boards are amazing, and they're expanding, and they're changing, and the new Uno and the new Nano, all of that very good. And then they have the proper Pro boards, the Potenta H7, which is an insanely powerful computer, and the X8, I believe, is the one which is their Linux board, which with a very powerful STM32 coprocessor on it. And then, of course, the Potenta C33, which is the newer, cheaper version of the H7, but which is completely compatible with everything the H7 does, and all of the Maker board line as well, all of their hats and things. And somewhere in the middle of all these things are the Nicle boards, postage stamp sized, or slightly bigger, really, depends on the postage stamps you buy, but they are very powerful, and they have various things built in. There's a vision version with a camera on it, there's a voice version with a microphone on it, and then there's the Sense ME, which has movement sensing, noxious gas sensing, magnet sensing, temperature and humidity sensing, all on this tiny little footprint of a board. And that is our product of the week for this week. But before we get to it, there is the small the thing that we haven't quite got round to giving away our last product of the week, because I should have done it last week and I was ill. So let's do that right now. Now, just to remind you, the product of the week last time was an NRF5340 audio development kit from Nordic Semiconductor, which is an absolutely crazy piece of kit. I had one very briefly in my hand, and I already have given one away, which is a shame because they're amazing. It's Nordic's flagship Bluetooth Low Energy chip, which is a pretty powerful chip in and of itself. You don't just have to use that for Bluetooth connectivity. They're a pretty chunky chip. You could do whatever audio processing you want to do on it, but the whole idea is that it's Bluetooth Low Energy, right? So that you can have audio going in and out of it. This could be the cornerstone of a homemade Alexa, or I know there is a project on the Electromaker projects page which turns it into a Bluetooth speaker system, because it has an audio codec on it which allows audio in and out. And of course, this being an evaluation board, you can evaluate it in various ways. That's what we were giving away, and the winner of the audio DK is the username Bossy1. Now, for some reason, YouTube only gives you these names. You can never actually see the name of the person. Very strange. So Bossy1, congratulations, you are the winner of the 5340 DK. And with the comment, I'd like to explore the Auracast functionality with the NRF 5340 DK. And I'd be very interested to see how you do that. In fact, when you do that, please document it on the Electromaker website, and we can talk about it maybe in a future show. So we'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this board sent out to you. Thank you to everybody who commented on the video and entered the competition. Thank you for everyone who watched that show. But now it's time to get back to our current product of the week. So, back to the Nicla Sense ME. Now, as always, there is a full video by our resident gadget guru, Robin Mitchell, talking about the Arduino Nicla Sense ME. If you want to hear someone who knows what they're talking about talk about it, please head to the description and click on that link, and you can see what they cooked up when they were talking about it when they made the product of the week video. But as I mentioned, in short, this is a very, very tiny board with a lot packed into it. And as it says here, you've got the parts that they're using as well are fairly well respected. There's a reason why most of the boards now that have integrated sensors are using these small Bosch parts, and it all changed just a few years ago. And it comes down to the simple fact that when you look at the price point compared to how good they are, Bosch have just done some really special things lately in terms of making these parts. It's as simple as that. And this was something that was mentioned a few times when it came to that moment of the crossover by people, again, at events when we were interviewing them, saying we are using these parts because there's no one else putting out parts at this price point yet. And that's why you can get a board like this, which is insanely well spec'd for these, I think the 69 euros or something that the Nicla Sense ME is selling for. 96, not 69, $96. I had the right numbers, they were just the wrong way around. So, $96 for a very tiny board with a huge amount of stuff built into it. So, what would be the use case for something like this? Well, you have a Nordic Semiconductor Bluetooth Low Energy system on chip running the show. The actual chip itself is the NRF52832, which has a 64 megahertz ARM Cortex M4 chip with a bunch of other stuff that you can read through if you're interested. But the idea is that there's a fairly powerful chip on here attached to a bunch of sensors that are already in place that can attach to other things via Bluetooth Low Energy. Now, the entire Nicla line is designed to be very low power. You could bundle this thing together with a battery and use the development board as your board that you actually use out in the fleet. This is small enough to fit into a name tag. This is small enough to fit into a key fob, potentially. Well, that might be a little bit fat for a key fob. But there are projects out there which have used the Nicla Sense itself as the basis of a fitness tracker. Actually put a strap on it and put a 3D printed thing around it. And it's not that much bigger than the chunky, silly fitness watch that I have here. It costs several $100s, whereas this thing, for $100 is everything you need to not only have that functionality, but to program it to do whatever you want it to do. It's quite an interesting idea. And the Nicla line is something that I'm just a big fan of. I mean, there's a few different projects on the Electromaker website currently which use the Nicla. In fact, let's just take a quick look at that now. I believe the latest Nicla project that I looked at wasn't a Nicla Sense ME. I believe it was a Nicla voice project. So I scrolled straight past it. So look, this is a perfect example of it. This is actually the Nicla voice. So I know we're getting slightly off topic here, but I just wanted to show this project because it's a fantastic one from Shakisad, and this is using edge AI detection for voice. So you're training a model to detect certain voice commands on the edge on the Arduino Nicla voice. And this is especially interesting, this project. Again, I'm going to cover this very quickly because this is a tangent. I shouldn't be talking about this right now. This is using a data set that was actually produced using a synthetic voice system. And it's way more complicated than I can say right now, but this is putting some Kazakh onto the Nicla voice, so you can use Kazakh weight and command words by synthesizing various different versions of it, using online synthesis and cleaning it up using various different techniques, and then training a model and putting it onto the Nicla voice so that you can do completely offline voice recognition in whatever language you want, using whatever kind of voice you want, making your own data set without having to sit for hours and hours saying the same word 10,000 times. Fantastic, wonderful project, but a bit of a tangent. Let's get back to the game. So yes, tangent over. The Arduino Nicla Sense ME is one of the Nicla line, which is currently my favorite Arduino line of boards. They're really interesting. They're a little bit more expensive than the mainline Arduinos, but they are so much more powerful. And the idea behind the Pro line is that this development board itself could be deployed into your work, or it could be used for something out of the box. Attach a battery to it and go. This isn't necessarily a development board where you're evaluating all the things on the board to then make your own thing. No, this is a finished thing, and they're really interesting for that. There's a bunch of other things that I have not covered here. I'll leave Robin to explain that to you. However, there is one important thing that we do need to do, and that is give it away. Because, as always, the product of the week is, of course, something we'll be talking about because it is our product of the week, and if you would like to go and buy one, we would be very happy if you did. However, we will be giving one away to a lucky viewer, and the way that we give these away is very simple. You just need to make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, and then head down into the comment section and let us know what you would make if you actually won the Arduino Nicla Sense ME. And the other way that we are going to make sure that we get through all of these entries is that you must leave the hashtag SenseME, no spaces, hashtag SenseME. And that means that we will be able to find all of the entries and then pick one at random to be announced in next week's show. So the competition is open as of now. We will be announcing it during the next Electromaker Show. And yeah, good luck. Now, to close out this week's show, a new Linux single-board computer, which is twice as powerful as the Raspberry Pi 4, but costs less than the Raspberry Pi 4. It's a great thought, isn't it? However, it is a bit of a pipe dream right now. However, it's not a complete fabrication. This is something that should be coming soon. Just unfortunately, yeah, the details are very, very slim. So it started with this tweet from Libra Computer. These are the people who make Le Potato, you may have heard of. This is a version of the single board computer which is vaguely based around the Raspberry Pi 3. This is Project Cottonwood, and I'll just read the tweet. Project Cottonwood started in 2019, and it has finally sampled. Along with Sweet Potato, they will be the first new boards they put out in over 5 years. Yet they have a massive software release coming on July the 4th to improve the performance and functionality of the entire existing board line. Now, at the time of me recording this, I could not find evidence of this software release, although it is definitely in the pipeline. I did see other tweets about people asking about it and them saying, hey, it's not, you know, it exists. It's just taking a little longer than we expected. But the board itself is very, very interesting. Now, the first thing I noticed, the second I saw this, I thought, okay, that's a very, very interesting heatsink, because really how much heat is that going to be sinking? But it is conveniently covering up the processor on this apparently Raspberry Pi 4 killing board that's going to cost less than a Raspberry Pi 4. Yeah, if we want to know a bit more about it, they mention here it'll cost $10 more than a Potato, and a Big Cottonwood, which I guess is the bigger version, or Little Cottonwood will cost 10 more than a Potato. Big Cottonwood will cost twice as much as a Le Potato, which is all very, very cryptic and all this kind of stuff. Luckily, we have an article from Tom's Hardware that helps decrypt that slightly. And it is this article by Avram Pilch on Tom's Hardware that I will be linking in the description if you would like to know more about it, which again shows this very interesting image of the Raspberry Pi form-factored Project Cottonwood. And yeah, you can't see what controller it is, but as they mention here, they use a few different kinds. Oh no, so to go back to those cryptic pricings, this is explained here. $10 more than the Le Potato board, which is a $35 board, so Little Cottonwood should be $45. Big Cottonwood, which will be twice as much as Le Potato, but double the speed of a Pi 4, doing the math, that sounds like a $45 and $70 for the two boards respectively. $70 for a single board computer that in theory is supposed to double the speed of a Raspberry Pi 4, but this is all very conjecture-y, up in the air, airy-fairy, until of course we see this. Yeah, one of the things that is interesting about it is we don't even know what type of system on chip they're going to be using. So if you look at the Libra Computer's website, you will see boards with a variety of different ones. Again, the reason I've chose this article is just because it condenses everything very nicely. So they use processors from Allwinner, Rockchip, and Amlogic on the current lines of those SBCs, and the Amlogic S95X powers Le Potato, which is the closest to what this Cottonwood / Raspberry Pi 3 form factor board has. And that's about it, unfortunately. That's where we're at. That's where it lands. It's a really exciting prospect that there's this potentially super cheap board that might completely eclipse the Pi. And of course, there's a bunch of stuff we don't know about it, not just from the fact that we don't know when this thing will release and all this kind of stuff. One of the reasons why there aren't a huge amount of competitors for the Raspberry Pi boards that are out there undercutting them is that there's software support is always an issue. Getting something to run that fast on this kind of board, it comes with its own kind of heat dissipation issues. There's a lot of bumps in the road so far, but I wanted to put it out there because from the second I saw the original tweet that of course someone sent me as soon as they saw it, kind of like, this is Electromaker Show fodder, which was supposed to be on last week's show, I wanted to mention it to you. So I will leave a link to this Tom's Hardware article in the description. If there are any detectives in the crowd who know a little bit more about this or where I could read more about it, do let me know. But at the time of looking at it here, the Twitter thread didn't really tell us much, and neither did their website. And unless I'm missing something, the software update for the already existing Potato and Le Potato boards hasn't quite materialized. Although I think they said 4th of July in the original tweet, and another one said sort of mid-July, which is sort of where we're getting to now, so maybe it'll show up any day now. But yes, Project Cottonwood could be the Raspberry Pi killer that everyone has been waiting for. Who knows? That has been our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your patience during my absence recently. We should be back to sort of very regular shows for the next few weeks, apart from maybe the 3rd week in August or something, where I am taking an actual honest-to-goodness week off, which I haven't done in I don't know how long, maybe 4 years? So yeah, I'll be enjoying that week. But yes, we should be back to the regularity of things, and thank you to all of you who are also listening to this as a podcast. I know some of you watch some weeks on YouTube and sometimes listen to it as a podcast. podcast on the way back and forth from work and out running and all that kind of stuff. We will be back next week with another show, but in the meantime, as always, links to everything I've talked about this week will be in the description of the video, and you can find more information about things like the contest and all the Hardware Pioneer stuff on our blog on electromaker.io. But for now, I hope you have a fun, safe and creative week, and I'll chat to you soon.